Welcome to 333, 337. The lecture that we are going to be reviewing today is for Module 2. Let me pull it up right here for us. And it is the science of reading. So let me go ahead and begin this slideshow. Sorry, getting started here. The science of reading. So this is actually one of my favorite topics in literacy, and I hope that you enjoy it as well. I am Dr. Lori Benoit of McNeese State University, Burton College of Education, and this is for Education 333, 337. The lecture is The Science of Reading. In this lecture, learners will examine the science of reading with special attention to Scarborough's reading rope and the simple view of literacy. Learners will consider how appropriate support of all the strands of Scarborough's reading rope can support students' literacy proficiency and content outcomes. Our essential questions are, what role can I play in supporting students as they develop literacy competencies? What teacher moves can I make to help students develop each strand of the reading rope? The science of reading is research that details how children learn how to read and how to address the challenges related to reading and writing. The majority of middle and high school teachers are not trained on teaching children how to read and are not equipped to help struggling readers. And as we learned in the previous module, this has actually led to a lot of confusion surrounding the topic of reading and reading instruction. And it's also led to a lack of training in our teacher preparation programs. However, policy has recently changed, especially in Louisiana, and literacy is a huge focus for our teacher preparation programs and our school systems. So content area texts at the middle and high level are increasingly complex, and students struggle to extract meaning from those texts. Therefore, it's essential for secondary teachers to become better equipped to support literacy. The science of reading is a vast interdisciplinary body of scientifically based research about reading and issues related to reading and writing. And this comes from a defining moment, that particular quote. For studies to be considered scientifically based research, they have to have some qualifications. So they must be experimental or quasi-experimental, have detailed description of study methods, and allow for replication or refinement of the findings, and they have to be published in a peer-reviewed journal. So this is not a situation where a particular group is heralding it as expert. For something to be scientifically based research, it has to meet some pretty stringent qualifications. This research for the science of reading has been conducted over the last 5 decades across the world. It's derived from thousands of studies conducted in multiple languages, and it's culminated in a preponderance of evidence to inform how proficient reading and writing develop, why some of our students have difficulty, and how we can most effectively assess and teach and improve student outcomes through prevention of and intervention of reading difficulties. So the science of reading actually comes from a pretty vast range of disciplines and fields: cognitive psychology, communication sciences, developmental psychology, education implementation science, linguistics, neuroscience, school psychology. These are just some of the sources where this research has come from. It is not an ideology or a philosophy. It is not a fad, a trend, a new idea, or a pendulum swing. It's not a political agenda. It's not a one-size-fits-all approach. It's not a program. It's not a single specific component of instruction, such as phonics, although phonics is part of it. It's not something that you can just open a box or go to, one training and suddenly you've got the magic wand, for literacy. I wish it were that simple, but it's not that. The science of reading are fundamental ways that we learn the complex skill of reading, and effective instructional methods and strategies that support learners, not only in literacy, but actually literacy, of course, supports all of our content learning. So we're going to watch this quick video. I want to just take 1 minute and make sure that I'm sharing my sound before I play. Yeah, I am. Okay. Just wanted to make sure that I am playing the sound on this because I want us to be able to hear this video. So we'll take a minute and watch this video.
Another helpful theoretical model for the reading process is Scarborough's reading rope, which expands upon the simple view of reading. Scarborough's reading rope provides a meaningful visual representation of the process by which decoding, or word recognition, and language comprehension subskills are combined during skillful reading. The decoding subskills are each assigned a strand in the rope: phonological awareness, decoding and spelling, and sight recognition. Under language comprehension, we need to build these reading subskills: background knowledge, vocabulary knowledge, language structures, verbal reasoning, and literacy knowledge. Think of these subskills as strands in the reading rope that become stronger and stronger the more tightly the strands are woven together. As the language comprehension subskills grow and get stronger, the reader becomes increasingly strategic in their reading. At the same time, as the reader strengthens their decoding subskills, they're becoming more automatic in their reading. With increasingly strategic and increasingly automatic reading, skilled reading occurs and the reader can comprehend text. Skilled reading appears to be effortless, but a skilled reader has fortified the subskills of the reading rope in order to manage the skills simultaneously and automatically, resulting in reading comprehension.
All right. So that definitely helps us. Scarborough's reading rope is going to be a fixture of our course, and it's also a fixture of our understanding of literacy of it in and of itself. So I want you to consistently keep in mind those two strands. We're really going to focus on that upper band. But before we jump into this, I also want to familiarize you with something called the simple view of reading. So one of the, another thing to help you understand it is this basic equation. So decoding, which remember, this was the lower band of Scarborough's reading rope. This is the ability to apply sound symbol relationships to read words. So this is mainly what we focus on in lower grade levels when students are learning to read. Of course, we want to help them practice that skill throughout their education, but decoding is typically focused on in those early elementary years. Language comprehension is that upper band, and this is the ability to understand spoken language. Students begin to navigate this rope, of course, even in the lower grades, but this is primarily the area that we're focusing on when they get to high school. But here's where it comes together. Decoding, imagine that you put a 1 in decoding. So just think of it as a basic equation. So decoding is 1, language comprehension is 1. So then our answer for reading comprehension would be 1. That's awesome. That's what we want. But let's say that someone is weak in decoding. So that would receive a 0. Language comprehension, which typically doesn't work this way, but just for the sake of this theory, 1. Well, 0 times 1 is 0. So even if a student has good comprehension skills, they may, if their decoding, their reading decoding is poor, their overall comprehension is going to be lower, and vice versa. So that's just a simple view of reading to kind of help us understand the way that works. So Scarborough's reading rope, as we just learned in the video, In 2001, Dr. Hollis Scarborough created the reading rope using pipe cleaners to convey how the different strands of reading are all interconnected yet independent of one another. For many students, learning to read is a challenge. Scarborough's rope captures the complexity of learning to read. So the rope is made up of lower and upper strands. When all of the components intertwine, it results in skilled and accurate, fluent reading with strong comprehension. So we watched this video already about Scarborough's reading rope and its independent strands. I put it here again in case you wanted to go back in and watch that. Let me pause it. We will not be watching it again. We will take just a minute, though, so that you can see how the simple view of reading aligns with Scarborough's reading rope. So in this case, it's a little bit flipped. We're going to be looking, our course focuses on this lower band: vocabulary knowledge, background knowledge, language structures, literacy knowledge, verbal reasoning. And these are the ones that we focus on. We do touch on and mention decoding, phonological awareness, and sight word as part of the decoding, but those are really foundational. Those of you who are in K-12 certification areas, this is something that you're going to be focusing more on the language comprehension area of your students' literacy development. This is just another view that we're going to look at from time to time, and notice this is why we call it the upper. In this area, it is the upper strand. And just to give you a brief preview, what we're talking about here with background knowledge are facts, concepts, things that provide that contextual awareness when students are encountering new content, new text, new learning situations. Vocabulary, this is the breadth, the precision, sometimes of a specific academic language, and then making those links to things that they already know in their vocabulary. So this is really important when we're talking about prefixes and suffixes, root words. Language structures are so important for our students. So the syntax, the way that a sentence is arranged, and the way how it contributes to meaning, and also semantics. So the different ways that a word can have different meaning when it's combined with other words or when it is put into some other verbal structure. Verbal reasoning. So this is the ability to do a lot of that critical thinking, drawing an inference, or being able to see a comparison like a metaphor and derive meaning from it. And then literacy knowledge itself. So print concepts and genres. How is text arranged? This even has to do with some of our compositions when we're thinking about music, or even documentaries when we're thinking about our different content areas, helping our students to make those transitions to the purpose of a text and the way that it is laid out. So of course, as our readers become increasingly strategic and increasingly automatic in these two huge strands here, these smaller strands that combine these two huge strands, that notice that it gets more tightly woven, and that's where we get skilled reading, which is what we want for all of our readers. I just briefly went over what the upper strands were, but the lower strands, we're talking about phonological awareness, a skill set that includes identifying and manipulating units of oral language. So parts such as words and syllables. And this is, if you think about when students begin to have like letter of the week, or sound of the week. And then that's what we're talking about with phonological awareness. Decoding is the ability to apply the knowledge of sound letter relationships to correctly pronounce written words. And this is kind of an interesting statistic. In 2019, only 35% of fourth graders were at or above a national proficiency level on reading assessment. So this is pretty shocking, because decoding is something that they should be learning to do strategically before fourth grade. And then sight recognition is our sight word memory, is also referred to as our orthographic lexicon, which includes all the words we can read accurately and effortlessly. Literate adults have a sight word memory of 30,000 to 70,000 words on average. Starting in the third grade, it's estimated that skilled orthographic mappers anchor 10 to 15 new words a day into their sight word memories. Sight word recognition is foundational to fluent reading. And this is why, especially in elementary schools, you're going to see a lot of focus on this in those lower grade levels. I already mentioned the upper bands. Sorry, I'm kind of clicking through here a little bit quickly. Let me go back a little bit. Yeah. So skilled reading, again, is when all of those strands really begin to work together. And I put a picture of this. If we were to be in person, we would actually make our own strands together. And it's definitely something that you can do. We would label them and talk about each strand. But it's important for us to know that these strands weave together to allow our students to not only read more complex text, but we know that uh, reading and decoding of more complex text allows them to more meaningfully engage not only with academics, but with their world. Critical thinking is much more enhanced when students have the ability to fluently read. So for secondary teachers, what this means is pretty important. Until students are skilled readers, they are not able to read and comprehend the information from the different content areas. You do not have to be a reading teacher or spend a lot of time creating activities to help build skilled readers within your discipline. Integrating the science of reading into your current lessons is as easy as asking yourself what teacher moves you can make in different strands of the rope that will help students read and comprehend the material better. And when we're talking about reading and comprehending, I do know and I do understand that some of our content areas and certification areas do not encounter text, printed text as regularly as others do. However, we want to consider number one, is there more ways that I could bring in printed text to give my students practice with this? So we know that literacy is an equity issue. So is there a way that I could engage my students more fully in comprehending printed text? And then secondly, am I doing other things such as giving them discussion opportunities, giving them opportunities to, like, as part of a discussion, to speak and listen, to practice active listening and to assess active listening? Am I bringing in visual text in the form of videos and charts and maps and graphs and those sorts of things, and teaching them how to decode and read the language of my content? So I want you to think beyond just printed text, and I want you to think about the language of your content area and what it takes to be a skilled reader. How can we support our students in navigating those very complex and oftentimes confusing, if you think about it? For example, if some of our high school students in geometry, a plane means a certain thing. But if they go to English class and they're reading, an article or a book about flying or Amelia Earhart or something, a plane means something very different. And then if they go to a geography class, a world geography class, or they may have the definition of plane there, and it has a different spelling, but it has the same sound, and they may encounter that all in the same day. And so we've got to think about all the different ways that we are introducing language and supporting our students as they navigate the multiple languages of our disciplines. So here are some examples of the science of reading teacher moves: providing vocabulary practice prior to starting a section or unit. So think about, could I do this through a Quizlet? Is there a list of words and definitions that I could give students to, like, have parallel with the challenging text we're going to read. Using pictures as often as possible. It says to help special populations, and we know that that's important for special populations, such as English language learners or some of our special needs populations, reading disabilities. However, all students benefit from the use of pictures and the use of visuals. Allowing students early access to a text, even with a read aloud version, if possible. And so now this is readily available. Most of our students have one-to-one. They have their own laptops or tablets that they're bringing to class. It's so easy to teach them how to use the read aloud software that's available. Either before or after a whole class read aloud, have students partner read a section to build their fluency and understanding. I've seen this done successfully even in advanced high school classes. It's really just a wonderful way to help students practice and become comfortable with reading. Offering a paired lower level text that allows students to build their background knowledge before reading the curricular-based text, that can be really meaningful, especially for a very complex text. The sciences, that can be super important. Some of our very, very dense social studies and history courses, it would be really nice to offer a paired lower level, sort of like hit the highlights before we jump into the deep end with some of that content. This is your discussion board prompt for this week. Number one, what parts of Scarborough's reading rope does your content area or curriculum most directly focus on? So feel free to go back and kind of look at those bands and pick out, one or two that you think your content area could support. What strands do your students struggle with the most? And so this, I'm just saying in general here, it might not be one that you necessarily feel like your content area is supporting, but just in general, you think this is the one that your students seem to struggle with the most. And then number three, what are the implications of Scarborough's reading rope for secondary teachers and K-12 certification area teachers? So what is the science of reading and Scarborough's reading rope? What does this mean for us? How should we be supporting our students according to what we have discovered about the science of reading? So please go back and take a look at the strands so that you can speak to this discussion prompt for this week. I hope you have a wonderful week. Please reach out if you have any questions. Thank you.